The day I lost my cake shop was the day I stopped being the dutiful daughter-in-law. I remember standing in my kitchen watching Diane's perfectly manicured fingers slide the contract across my granite countertop like she was dealing cards in a rigged game. "It's for the best, dear," she said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "The family business needs to be properly managed by professionals. I'm Meredith, and for the past 5 years, I've poured my heart and soul into Sweet Dreams Cakery. Every morning at 5 a.m., I'd unlock those doors, fire up the ovens, and create edible art with butter and sugar. The neighborhood children knew me by name, local couples trusted me with their wedding memories, and my signature designs had won regional competitions. None of that seemed to matter to Diane. "Mom, please," Trevor said, shifting uncomfortably beside me, running his fingers through his hair with that nervous habit I used to find endearing. "Can't we discuss this after Meredith's big order is finished? The timing isn't great." "There's nothing to discuss," Diane replied, tapping the paper with her crimson nail, the sound like a tiny hammer driving nails into my dream. "The shop needs proper business oversight. Meredith clearly needs help taking it to the next level." My hands trembled as I gripped the edge of the counter, feeling the cool stone ground me as my emotions threatened to overflow. I've doubled our profits in the last 2 years and expanded our client base. The business is thriving without corporate interference. "Oh, sweetie," Diane's laugh felt like ice water down my spine, her eyes assessing my kitchen like she was already planning renovations. "Those little birthday cakes you make are charming, but this is about legacy. The Stevens family name deserves better than a neighborhood cake shop. We can franchise this concept across the state." I looked at Trevor, silently pleading for support, for any sign that he remembered the late nights we'd spent planning this place, choosing every fixture, testing recipes until dawn. He avoided my eyes, suddenly fascinated by the custom floor tiles I'd saved for months to afford when we renovated. "Trevor," I whispered, my voice catching in my throat, "please. This is our dream." He finally met my gaze, his face a battlefield of guilt and conflict. "Maybe Mom's right, Mare. The business guidance could help us expand. You're always saying you wish you had more time for the creative side." The betrayal burned in my chest. 5 years of marriage, countless promises of partnership, and here he was, choosing his mother's ambitions over our shared dreams yet again. "Sign it, dear." Diane pushed the paper closer, her diamond bracelet catching the light. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Think of it as joining forces with a seasoned professional." My phone buzzed on the counter, a text from Julia at the shop. "Boss, the Anderson family is here early for the birthday cake consultation. The little girl is so excited. Should I start without you?" That message was my escape hatch. "I have to go," I said, grabbing my keys and apron, feeling a rush of relief. "There's a client waiting, an 8-year-old's birthday. This business conversation needs to be handled when I'm not in the middle of my workday." Diane called after me, "My contacts are expecting the paperwork by the end of the week, Meredith. This opportunity won't wait forever." I was already halfway out the door, but I caught Trevor's defeated sigh. "I'll talk to her, Mom. She'll come around when she sees the business plan." At the cake shop, I threw myself into work, designing a fairy castle birthday cake while Julia handled the consultation with the beaming parents and their wide-eyed daughter. My hands stayed steady even as my thoughts raced. Years of perfecting recipes, building relationships with suppliers, teaching local kids about baking, all about to be commercialized and stripped of personality by my mother-in-law's corporate vision. "You okay, boss?" Julia asked, wiping down the display case as we closed that evening, concern evident in her young face. "You've been quieter than usual today. That Anderson girl loved your design sketch, by the way." "I'm fine," I lied, organizing tomorrow's order forms with mechanical precision. Just tired. Thanks for handling things while I was delayed. Later that night, I sat at my desk reviewing the contract Diane had left behind. The terms were brutal. I'd retain a small ownership percentage, but all creative control would transfer to Stephen's properties. My recipes, my staff, my vision, all under Diane's corporate thumb. Trevor found me there at midnight, still poring over the legal jargon. "Honey, come to bed. We can figure this out tomorrow when we're both thinking clearly." "Figure what out?" I asked, not looking up, my fingers tracing the clause about standardizing product offerings. "How to surrender everything I've built to your mother's corporate machine." "Mom's just trying to help us grow the business," he said, massaging my shoulders tentatively. "She has connections we don't." "Stop." I finally faced him, shrugging away from his touch. "Your mother has never tried to help me. She's trying to control my business, like she controls every aspect of your life. This isn't about growth, it's about possession." His face hardened, that familiar defensive look whenever his mother was criticized. "That's not fair. She's built a successful business empire from nothing. Isn't it fair? When was the last time you made a decision about our future without calling her first? Our house, our vacation plans, even the car you drive, everything gets her approval." The silence between us stretched painfully. My phone lit up with an email notification, my monthly small business newsletter. I opened it absently, needing a distraction from the tension, and there it was, the headline that changed everything: "Local real estate market plummets. High-end commercial properties hit hardest." I clicked through, scanning until I found what I needed. Diane's precious development projects, her pride and joy, had lost nearly half their value. The same properties she'd showcased at every family gathering, the ones she'd leveraged to start Stephen's properties. Trevor was still talking, defending his mother with practiced ease, but I barely heard him. My mind was racing, connections forming like ingredients in a perfect recipe. I knew Diane's type, all appearance, no contingency plan. The market crash would devastate her, but she'd never admit vulnerability. She'd maintain her designer wardrobe and luxury car until the very end. I looked at my husband, still making excuses for his mother, and made my decision. If Diane wanted to play games with my livelihood, I'd show her exactly how it felt to lose everything you've worked for. "You're right," I said, cutting off his well-worn defense. "I'll sign the papers tomorrow." Trevor's relief was painful to witness, his shoulders relaxing as if a weight had been lifted. "Really? You mean it? Mom will be thrilled." Of course, I smiled, thinking of the separate business account I'd maintained since marriage, my safety net that Trevor knew nothing about. After all, it's what's best for the family business, right? Little did they know, I was about to redefine exactly what family business meant. The next morning, you did what? Allison nearly choked on her coffee, her eyes wide with disbelief. We were sitting in her small law office, where I'd gone straight after signing over my cake shop that morning, the ink barely dry on the contract. "I signed it," I said, my voice steadier than the turmoil inside me, "but I have a plan. A plan that doesn't involve anything illegal against my mother-in-law, I promise." She was only half joking as she raised her eyebrows in concern. I pulled out my phone and showed her the real estate listings I'd been researching. "I'm going to buy her house." Allison stared at me for a long moment, her legal training evident in the careful way she controlled her expression. "Okay, you need to back up and explain everything." And I mean everything. I told her about discovering Diane's financial vulnerability, about the market crash affecting her development projects, and my suspicions that she was using my cake shop to shore up her failing empire. That's why she was so aggressive about getting control, I explained, leaning forward in my chair. She doesn't care about cakes or community, she needs my shop's steady income and solid reputation to keep up appearances and secure new financing. Allison leaned back in her chair, processing the information, tapping her pen against her notepad. And you're absolutely certain about her financial situation? This is a serious move, Meredith. Her younger son, Kyle, let it slip last week that she's been desperately trying to refinance her properties. He thought I knew already, being family and all. I couldn't suppress a bitter laugh that surprised even me. Diane's been hiding it well, but she's desperate. Her entire image is built on success. Even so, buying her house. I paused, feeling a mix of guilt and resolve. That's exactly the wake-up call she deserves. I finished my now cold coffee. Can you help me navigate this legally? Allison's expression shifted from professional concern to personal determination. Actually, I know someone who might be perfect for this situation. Let me call Warren. He specializes in exactly this kind of real estate transaction. 20 minutes later, a tall man in a tailored suit walked in. Allison greeted him with a quick, "Thanks for coming on short notice." "It's urgent." He extended his hand to me. "I'm Warren Pierce." Meredith Stevens. "And yes, I need to buy a house without the current owner knowing it's me." His eyebrows shot up, but he sat down without judgment as I explained the situation. He took careful notes in a leather-bound notebook, occasionally asking clarifying questions. "It's entirely doable," he said finally, closing his notebook with a decisive snap. "We can set up an LLC to make the purchase. My brother, Frank, is a real estate agent who specializes in discrete transactions. He can handle the actual purchase. Diane won't know you're involved until after the sale is complete and the deed is recorded." Perfect. I felt the first genuine smile in days spread across my face. "How soon can we start this process?" "I can have the LLC paperwork ready tomorrow, but Meredith," he paused, his expression serious, "this will inevitably get messy on a personal level. Are you truly prepared for the family fallout?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text from Trevor. "Mom wants us over for dinner Sunday. Says she has exciting plans for the cake shop's future. Please be open-minded." "I'm more than prepared," I said, showing them the message with a grim determination. "In fact, I'm counting on clearing the air once and for all." Later that afternoon, I was back at the cake shop, now technically working under Stevens Properties' oversight. Julia was carefully piping delicate flowers onto cookies, shooting me concerned glances every few minutes. "You seem different today," she said finally, setting down her piping bag. "Good different, but also, I don't know, determined different." I was about to respond when Kyle walked in, bringing with him the scent of leather jacket and his trademark casual energy. Trevor's younger brother had always been the family rebel, keeping a healthy distance from Diane's controlling influence. "Hey, sis," he grabbed a cookie from the display case, admiring the artistry before taking a bite. "Heard about the big corporate transition. You holding up okay?" "Just peachy," I replied, watching him carefully for any additional information. "How's your mom? Still trying to unload that massive house in Oak Ridge Estates?" "God, I wish she would," he snorted, licking frosting from his thumb. "She's too proud to admit she can't afford it anymore. The property taxes alone are bleeding her dry, but heaven forbid Diane Stevens downsize like a normal person." "That must be stressful for her," I said, keeping my tone neutral while filing away this confirmation. "Yeah, well," he shrugged, his photographer's eye scanning the shop appreciatively. "Maybe if she focused more on fixing her own financial problems instead of trying to control everyone else's businesses and lives." After he left, Julia turned to me. wiping flour from her hands onto her apron. "Did you see that look in your eye when he mentioned the house? What are you planning, boss?" "Let's just say some significant changes are on the horizon." I started gathering my purse and car keys. "Can you handle closing tonight? I have some important appointments to make." That evening, I met with Warren and his brother, Frank, at their downtown office. Frank had already pulled the property records and recent market analyses, spreading them across the conference table. "The timing couldn't be better," he said, pointing to the downward trends. "The market crash has scared off most potential buyers, and this house has been quietly listed for months. We can probably secure it for well below asking price." "And you're absolutely certain this will work legally?" I asked, looking at the complex LLC formation documents Warren had prepared. "The corporate structure is completely solid," Warren assured me, pointing out key provisions. "Diane won't know you're involved until you choose to reveal yourself as the principal." I signed where indicated on multiple forms, then handed over the cashier's check I'd brought. My emergency fund was about to become my insurance policy against Diane's takeover. "One more thing," Frank said as I gathered my coat to leave. "Once we make the offer, things will move quickly. Are you emotionally ready for what comes next with your family?" I thought about my cake shop, about Trevor's conflict avoidance, about years of Diane's subtle undermining and not so subtle disapproval. I've spent 5 years being the perfect daughter-in-law, trying to earn approval that was never going to come, I said with newfound clarity. I'm ready to be something else entirely, a businesswoman protecting what's hers. Walking to my car, I received another text from Trevor. "Mom's already discussing rebranding ideas for the shop. Please try to be supportive on Sunday. This means a lot to her." I typed back a simple "looking forward to hearing her vision" and smiled to myself. Sunday dinner was going to be enlightening for everyone involved. 2 days later, "The offer's been accepted without negotiation," Frank announced over speakerphone, his voice echoing slightly. I gripped my cell phone tighter, having ducked into the cake shop's walk-in refrigerator for privacy among the chilling buttercream and ganache. Diane didn't even counteroffer? She must be truly desperate to sell quickly. "How long until we close on the property?" 2 weeks maximum. Warren's expediting everything through his contacts. I ended the call as Julia knocked gently on the refrigerator door. "Boss, there's a corporate representative here again. Says he needs to discuss the rebranding strategy with you immediately." I stepped out to find a polished young man in an expensive suit waiting, tablet in hand. Diane's corporate soldier, sent to systematically dismantle everything that made my cake shop special and beloved. "Mrs. Stevens asked me to review these proposed changes with you," he said, pulling up a sleek presentation. "We're thinking Stevens' signature desserts for the new name." I bit my tongue until I tasted blood, nodding mechanically as he detailed their plans to replace my hand-lettered chalkboard menus with digital displays, and my carefully selected vintage furniture with contemporary chrome and glass. And naturally, he continued with corporate enthusiasm, "We'll need to standardize all recipes. No more daily specials or custom designs. Everything needs to be consistent and reproducible for potential franchising opportunities." My phone buzzed discreetly, a text from Allison, "Property purchase documents ready. Need your signature ASAP." "I have an urgent appointment," I said, standing abruptly and gathering my things. "We'll have to continue this presentation another time. But Mrs. Stevens specifically requested these changes be implemented by next week." I said later. I grabbed my purse and headed for the door, pausing only to whisper to Julia, "Don't let him change a single thing while I'm gone. Not even a fork." At Warren's office, I found both brothers waiting with a substantial stack of documents. "Once you sign these final papers," Warren explained, pointing to the signature lines, "The house will legally belong to your LLC. Diane won't know until the closing documents are filed publicly." "And that's completely legal?" I confirmed, pen poised. "Absolutely. Buyers have no obligation to reveal their identity until closing. By then, it will be too late for her to back out of the sale." I signed everywhere they indicated, my hand remarkably steady despite my racing heart. "There's something else you should know," Frank said, looking slightly uncomfortable. "Diane called this morning. She wants to accelerate the closing timeline. Claims she has another investment property she's interested in purchasing immediately." My cake shop's money, I realized aloud, the pieces clicking into place. She's planning to use my business's capital to fund another purchase before anyone realizes she's in financial trouble. Back at the shop, I found Trevor waiting, his face tight with tension, pacing in my small office. "Mom's wondering why you missed the meeting with the corporate development team," he said, following me as I hung up my coat. "She says you're being unnecessarily difficult about the transition." "Difficult?" I laughed harshly, the sound strange even to my own ears. "Like how she's being difficult about completely dismantling everything I've spent years building? Did you see their plans to standardize everything? She's trying to help grow the business, Meredith. This is what she does professionally. Stop saying that." I slammed my hand on the desk, making the framed photo of us on opening day jump. "When are you going to see what she's really doing? This isn't about helping me, it's about helping herself." "And what exactly is she doing, Meredith?" His voice rose to match mine, frustration evident. "Because from where I'm standing, you're the one acting strange lately. Secret phone calls, mysterious appointments, disappearing in the middle of busy days. You want to talk about strange behavior?" I pulled out the corporate redesign plans and spread them across the desk. "Your mother wants to erase every trace of my creativity from this place. 5 years of my life, my vision, my connection with this community, gone because she says so, and you're standing by letting her do it." Trevor's face softened, shifting to that placating expression I'd grown to resent. "It's just business evolution, honey. Change isn't always a bad thing." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with an urgent email from Frank, critical. "Diane's agent requesting closing date moved up to next week." "I have to go," I said, grabbing my keys from the desk drawer. Trevor's expression hardened, that familiar stubborn set to his jaw. "What's going on, Meredith? What aren't you telling me?" "Nothing you need to worry about." I paused at the door, unable to resist adding, "just like I apparently don't need to worry about my cake shop anymore." I spent the rest of the afternoon with Warren and Frank, rushing through closing paperwork and arranging financing details. By evening, everything was set for property transfer in just 5 days. Returning to the cake shop after hours, I found Julia still there, methodically removing the corporate representative's sample displays and promotional materials. "He tried to change everything while you were gone," she said, tossing a glossy brochure into the recycling bin. "I told him all changes needed your express approval first, as stated in the original contract." "Thank you." I helped her take down the mock-up of a digital menu board. "Things are going to get complicated around here very soon. You might want to start looking for another position, just to be safe." "No way," she crossed her arms decisively, her young face determined. "I'm staying right here. Someone needs to help you fight the corporate takeover. Besides, no one else makes buttercream like you taught me." My phone lit up with a text from Trevor. "Mom wants us over for dinner tomorrow night. Says we need to discuss your resistance to progress regarding the business changes." Speaking of corporate takeovers, I showed Julia the message. "Looks like tomorrow's the warm-up for Sunday's main confrontation. Think I should be nervous?" I thought about the house closing documents hidden in my tote bag, about Diane's smug certainty that her plan was succeeding, about Trevor's lifelong pattern of deferring to his mother's wishes. "No," I replied, surprising myself with how calm I felt. "I'm actually ready for this showdown." Julia squeezed my arm supportively. "Show them what a real businesswoman looks like, boss." I smiled, thinking of the storm about to break over the Stevens family. "Oh, I plan to. I really plan to." The next day, "Congratulations," Warren said, sliding the final property paperwork across his desk. "You're officially a homeowner again, this time of a rather impressive estate." I stared at the documents, my hands trembling slightly as I traced Diane's elegant signature. She'd signed them this very morning, still completely unaware of who had really purchased her beloved mansion. When exactly will she discover the truth? "The deed records tomorrow." He leaned back in his chair, looking satisfied. "By law, she has 3 days to vacate the premises once she receives the official notice." My phone buzzed again, Trevor calling for the 4th time today. I sent it to voicemail with a swipe. "He's been trying to reach me since last night's dinner," I explained to Warren. It didn't go well, to put it mildly. The previous evening had been a master class in passive-aggressive warfare. Diane had spent the entire meal outlining her plans for my shop while I sat there, smiling and nodding, knowing her carefully constructed world was about to implode. "We'll implement the new business plan starting Monday," she'd announced over coffee and dessert, not even asking my opinion. "We'll need to close for 2 full weeks for renovations and staff retraining." 2 weeks? I'd asked, keeping my voice carefully neutral while mentally calculating the lost revenue. "What about our standing orders and the children's birthday parties already scheduled?" "Oh, dear," she'd patted my hand condescendingly, her diamond tennis bracelet catching the light. "Those small neighborhood customers won't matter once we're properly positioned in the upscale market. We'll attract a completely different clientele. Those small neighborhood customers paid for everything in that shop." I'd snapped, finally losing my composure. "Every mixer, every oven, every recipe development session, they're the heart of this business." "Meredith," Trevor had cut in sharply, that warning tone I'd grown to resent. "Mom knows what she's doing with business scaling." The rest of the evening had devolved from there. Now, sitting in Warren's office, I checked my phone messages. 4 from Trevor, 1 from Kyle that caught my attention. What exactly happened at dinner? Mom's been locked in her home office all morning making frantic calls to her financial advisor. Never seen her like this. Looks like she's starting to feel the pressure of her financial situation, Warren observed, collecting the signed documents. Are you absolutely certain you want to wait until Sunday's dinner to reveal everything? We could send the notification sooner. Sunday dinner is her domain, I said with quiet determination, her weekly power play where everyone follows her script. It's poetically appropriate that's where this all ends. Back at the cake shop, I found Trevor waiting in my small office, pacing between the filing cabinet and desk. Where have you been all afternoon? He demanded, his tie loosened and hair disheveled. Mom's been trying to reach you about finalizing the renovation schedule. I had important appointments. More of those secret meetings you're so concerned about, I replied calmly. He ran his hands through his hair in frustration, a gesture that once endeared him to me. What's happening to you, Mayor? Ever since you signed over the shop, you've been different. You mean ever since you and your mother pressured me into signing over my life's work and passion? I corrected him, organizing receipts with deliberate precision. That's not a fair characterization. Mom is investing substantial capital in this venture. Is she really? I interrupted, thinking of her desperate rush to close the house sale. Are you absolutely certain about her current financial position? He faltered slightly, uncertainty flickering across his face. What are you implying? Before I could respond, Julia knocked on the doorframe. Sorry to interrupt, but Mrs. Stevens is here again. She seems agitated. Diane swept in, looking noticeably less polished than usual. Her designer blouse had a coffee stain near the collar, and her normally perfect hair showed signs of repeated nervous styling. Meredith, dear, we need to accelerate the renovation timeline. The contractors can start tomorrow morning. Tomorrow? Trevor looked confused, turning to his mother. Mom, you explicitly said Monday was the start date. Plans change in business, she snapped, then quickly composed her features. It's better for everyone to move quickly. Everyone meaning you and your timeline? I asked with deliberate sweetness. Her eyes narrowed dangerously. I don't appreciate your tone, Meredith, and I don't like what you're doing to my investment, but here we are. It's not your shop anymore, she reminded me, voice sharp as a pastry knife. You signed over controlling interest, remember? Oh, I remember every detail, I smiled, thinking of the house deed sitting in my bag. Speaking of important signatures, how's your house sale progressing? I hear the closing's been moved up. She paled visibly, perfectly manicured hand tightening on her purse strap. That's absolutely none of your concern. Mom, Trevor looked between us, confusion evident. What house sale? Are you selling the Oak Ridge property? Nothing important, darling, she grabbed her purse tighter, knuckles whitening. Just some routine real estate matters. Now, about tomorrow's renovation start. No, I said firmly, crossing my arms. Excuse me? Her voice went dangerously quiet. No renovations tomorrow. No renovations next week. Nothing changes until after Sunday's family dinner. You don't have the authority to delay this process, Sunday, I repeated calmly. Consider it my final request as the former proprietor. Surely you can grant me that small courtesy. She stared at me for a long moment, calculation visible behind her eyes despite her flustered appearance. Finally, she nodded stiffly. Fine. Sunday it is. But after that, things will change around here immediately. She turned to leave, her heels clicking sharply on the tile floor, then paused with a deliberate afterthought. Oh, and dear, do try to bring something other than those quaint little vanilla cupcakes this time. We're attempting to elevate the brand's image, after all. After she left, Trevor turned to me, confusion written across his face. What was that cryptic comment about the house? Is Mom really selling the Oak Ridge property? You should ask your mother directly, I suggested, arranging a display of fresh pastries. Though I sincerely doubt she'll tell you the complete truth about her financial situation. Meredith, please, can we just talk about this? Trevor, I have work to do, I cut him off, gesturing to the kitchen. Apparently, I only have a few days left to make my quaint little cupcakes before they're replaced with your mother's standardized corporate offerings. That evening, as I was closing up the shop, my phone lit up with a text from Frank, deed officially recorded. Legal notice will be delivered tomorrow morning. I looked around my cake shop, my beautiful, warm, successful business that Diane was so desperate to transform into another soulless chain, and felt a fierce satisfaction rising in my chest. Game on, Diane, I whispered to the empty room, the scent of vanilla and butter still lingering in the air. Game on. The next morning, the shop's bell chimed urgently as Kyle burst through the door, his photographer's bag still slung over his shoulder, face flushed with excitement or alarm, I couldn't immediately tell which. Have you seen Mom today? He asked without preamble. I looked up from the intricate fondant flowers I was arranging on a wedding cake display. No. Should I have? She's completely losing it. Like, full-on meltdown mode, He slumped onto a stool at the counter, running his hands through his hair. Some official-looking courier delivered legal papers this morning, and she's been locked in her home office making frantic calls ever since. How concerning, I said carefully, adding another delicate sugar rose to my creation. Any idea what those papers might contain? No specifics, but she keeps shouting about lawyers and impossible deadlines. He grabbed a blueberry muffin from the display case, stress eating like he used to do in college. Dad says she's been trying to reach every financial advisor and real estate attorney in her contact list. Julia caught my eye from across the room, trying to suppress a knowing smile. She was the only employee I'd trusted with the complete story. I'm sure she'll manage to sort it out, I said, adding the final golden touches to the cake. Your mother always lands on her feet, doesn't she? Yeah, but, Kyle lowered his voice, leaning closer over the counter, I think it's definitely about the house sale, and I overheard her mention the cake shop too. Something about needing to accelerate the acquisition timeline immediately. My phone buzzed discreetly, a text from Warren, Diane's attorney called. They're attempting to delay the eviction notice. Too late for that, I typed back quickly. The strangest part, Kyle continued, oblivious to my brief distraction, is that she keeps insisting she needs to speak with you before Sunday's dinner. Something urgent about moving up the renovation schedule. Does she indeed? I wiped my hands methodically on my apron. Well, she certainly knows where to find me. Right on cue, the bell above the door chimed again. Diane strode in, looking remarkably different from her usual polished self. Her expertly highlighted hair was visibly disheveled, her designer blouse had an unmistakable coffee stain near the collar, and her makeup couldn't quite conceal her stress. Kyle, she snapped upon seeing her younger son, what are you doing here? Just grabbing breakfast, Mom, he held up his half-eaten muffin defensively. Everything okay? You seem a little intense today. Everything's perfectly fine. I need to speak with Meredith alone. Immediately. Kyle glanced between us, curiosity evident, then wisely retreated to a corner table with Julia. We need to move up the renovations, Diane said without preamble or greeting, starting tomorrow morning. We've already discussed this extensively, I replied calmly, continuing to arrange display items as if this were any normal business day. Nothing changes until after Sunday's dinner. This isn't a request, Meredith. The contractors are already scheduled and materials ordered. Then you'll need to reschedule them, I responded evenly. Her perfectly manicured hands gripped the counter edge so tightly her knuckles whitened. Listen to me very carefully. I control this business now. You will follow my directives or what exactly? I met her gaze steadily, refusing to be intimidated. You'll terminate my position? Go right ahead. But good luck running this place without my recipes, my supplier relationships, and my loyal customer base who come specifically for my creations. Mom, Kyle called from his table, surprising me with his intervention, maybe this isn't the right approach. She whirled toward him, then visibly forced herself to regain composure before turning back to me. I've been extraordinarily patient with you, Meredith, but my patience has definite limits. Funny coincidence, I said, maintaining my calm exterior, I was just thinking the exact same thing about my own patience. Her phone rang shrilly, probably another attorney calling with bad news, and she grabbed it with barely concealed panic. This conversation isn't over, she hissed before hurrying outside to take the call. Kyle approached the counter once she'd left, genuine concern in his eyes. I've never seen her like this, not even during the divorce or when I dropped out of business school. People often reveal their true nature when they're desperate, I said, methodically cleaning my workspace. Desperate, he frowned, genuine confusion on his face. Mom's never desperate. She's always the one in control of every situation. Is she really? I raised an eyebrow meaningfully. Maybe you should ask her specific questions about the house sale and her current financial position. Later that evening, Trevor came by as I was closing the shop. He looked troubled, dark circles under his eyes. Kyle mentioned you and Mom had another confrontation today. Not a confrontation, I corrected him, carefully counting the day's receipts. Just a fundamental disagreement about appropriate timing. He also mentioned something about the house being sold. He leaned against the counter, trying to appear casual but failing. What's really going on, Mayor? Mom's acting completely out of character. You're being uncharacteristically secretive. Have you ever considered, I asked, deliberately closing the register drawer with a final sounding click, why your mother suddenly needed control of my cake shop so desperately? She wants to help grow the family business portfolio. No, I cut him off firmly, she needs it. There's a crucial difference there. What are you talking about? His confusion seemed genuine. Ask her directly about the house sale, Trevor. Ask her why she's so desperate to start renovations here before Sunday's dinner. His phone buzzed predictably, Diane, of course. He answered immediately, the old pattern reasserting itself. Yes, Mom, no, I'm with Meredith right now, what? But you said, okay, I'll be right there. Let me guess, I said as he ended the call, another emergency family meeting? She says it's critically important. He hesitated, hand extended toward me. Come with me? Please? No thank you. I grabbed my purse, ready to leave. I'm saving all my family interaction energy for Sunday's dinner. Meredith, please, something's clearly wrong. You should go, I said, gesturing to his still buzzing phone. Your mother's waiting, as always. After he left, I checked my own messages. One from Warren, everything legally set for Sunday. No possible way she can prevent what's coming. Another from Allison, are you absolutely certain you want to proceed this way? It's not too late to consider a different approach. I thought about Diane's increasingly desperate behavior today, about Trevor's lifetime of divided loyalties, about years of subtle undermining and increasingly overt control attempts. I'm absolutely certain, I replied to both messages. Sunday dinner is happening exactly as planned. I looked around my beloved cake shop one last time before leaving for the night. By this time next week, everything would be dramatically different. I just hoped I was emotionally prepared for the family fallout. Saturday morning, Mrs. Stevens requests an immediate private meeting, the corporate attorney announced, striding into my shop Saturday morning with an air of practiced authority. She's prepared to offer you a quite generous severance package. I continued carefully boxing up cupcakes for a child's birthday party, my focus on the delicate frosting. Is she indeed? She's willing to buy out your remaining ownership percentage, he continued, placing an official-looking document folder on the counter, at full market value, plus 3 months additional salary compensation. Tell me something interesting, I said, tying a perfect satin bow around the box. Does Diane yet fully understand the implications of the property eviction notice she received? The lawyer's practiced professional expression slipped for just a moment, genuine surprise crossing his face. I'm not at liberty to discuss other client matters. No, I smiled knowingly, then I'm certainly not at liberty to discuss this business proposal either. I'll see you at dinner tomorrow. He left the folder anyway, but I didn't bother opening it. Instead, I texted Warren, Diane's trying to buy my silence before tomorrow's revelation. Clever last-minute strategy. Unfortunately for her, it's far too late for damage control, he replied. The bell chimed again. This time, it was Kyle, looking significantly more agitated than yesterday, his creative dishevelment replaced by genuine stress. "Mom's selling the house," he blurted out the moment the door closed behind him. "She just informed the family. Claims it's a strategic portfolio adjustment or some corporate doublespeak." "Really?" I raised an eyebrow, carefully starting another batch of birthday cupcakes. "Did anyone happen to mention who purchased it?" "Some investment company called Summit Valley LLC, but that's not even the weird part." He leaned in close, voice dropping to a near whisper. "She's making a huge deal about everyone attending dinner tomorrow. Mandatory family attendance. Dad, me, Trevor, everyone absolutely must be there for the weekly tradition, no exceptions." I concentrated on measuring ingredients, feeling his eyes on me. "Meredith," he grabbed my arm gently but firmly. "What's really happening here? First the cake shop, now the house sale. Something's seriously wrong with this picture." Before I could decide how to answer, Trevor walked in. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "We need to talk," he said, his voice uncharacteristically serious. "I'll just." Kyle backed away awkwardly. "Yeah, see you both tomorrow at the family showdown." After he left, Trevor slumped onto a stool, exhaustion evident in every line of his body. "Why didn't you tell me about Mom's buyout offer?" "You mean the one her attorney delivered approximately 20 minutes ago?" I kept my voice even. "She's attempting to retroactively make things right, Trevor." I set down my piping bag with more force than necessary. "Make it right?" She pressured me into signing over my business, is systematically planning to destroy everything I've spent years building, and now thinks she can buy my silence with 3 months' salary? That's not making it right, that's damage control. "Silence about what exactly?" He ran his hands through his hair in frustration. "Everyone's acting completely irrational. Mom's having secret financial meetings, you're being cryptic about this house sale. Have you directly asked her about that?" I interrupted, meeting his eyes. "About why she's really selling the family estate so suddenly." "She says it's just a standard business decision." "And you believe that explanation? Just like you believed her about needing to take over my cake shop for purely beneficial reasons?" His phone buzzed yet again, Diane, predictably. This time, however, he glanced at it and silenced the call. "What am I supposed to believe, Meredith? My wife is keeping significant secrets, my mother is unraveling." "Your mother," I said firmly, "is finally facing the consequences of her own actions. And tomorrow, at dinner, everyone present is going to see exactly who she really is beneath the designer clothes and executive title." "What does that cryptic statement mean?" Another discreet buzz, this time my phone. Frank had sent a photo of the final eviction notice, ready for delivery tomorrow. "You should probably go," I said, turning back to my baking. "Your mother undoubtedly needs your support right now. Meredith, please, just tell me what's happening." "Tomorrow, Trevor. All your questions will be answered tomorrow, at dinner. I promise you that much." After Trevor left, Julia emerged from the back room, wiping flour from her hands. That conversation was intense. I could feel the tension from the kitchen. "Just wait until tomorrow's dinner." I checked my phone again, finding a message from Allison asking if I needed moral support for the confrontation. "Yes," I typed back, "but not at the actual dinner. Meet me after?" After the rest of the day passed in a whirlwind of baking and preparations for weekend orders, I stayed long after closing, meticulously ensuring everything was perfectly organized for Sunday's special cake orders. As I was locking up, Kyle texted again. "Mom's literally called every real estate attorney and financial advisor in town." "What exactly is happening?" "Nothing she hasn't brought upon herself," I replied, feeling a strange calm settle over me. That night, I lay awake in the guest bedroom, having told Trevor I needed space to think. Through the wall, I could hear him tossing and turning. My phone lit up with a final message from Warren, everything legally prepared for tomorrow. Final opportunity to reconsider this approach. I thought about the first time I'd met Diane, how she'd surveyed my modest cake shop with barely disguised condescension, how she'd spent years subtly undermining my business decisions, using Trevor as her unwitting messenger, how she'd finally revealed her true intentions when financial pressure gave her the opportunity to seize what I'd built with my own hands. No reconsideration necessary, I replied firmly. Proceeding as planned. Sunday morning dawned with perfect blue skies. I rose early, baking one final batch of my quaint little vanilla cupcakes, the ones Diane had repeatedly dismissed as too simple. Trevor watched me from the kitchen doorway, his expression uncertain. "Mom texted that we need to be there by 5 sharp, he said quietly. I'm well aware. I placed the cupcakes carefully in a signature box from my shop. Wouldn't want to be late for what will certainly be a memorable Stevens family dinner. What exactly does that cryptic comment mean? His voice held genuine concern. I closed the box, tied it with a perfect satin ribbon, and collected my purse, ensuring the house documents were securely inside. It means, I said, heading for the door with measured steps, that after tonight, your family dynamic will never be quite the same again. The look of confusion and growing alarm on his face almost made me reconsider my approach. Almost. At the Stevens dinner, Diane's formal dining room was suffocating with unspoken tension. Kyle kept checking his phone under the table, Trevor wouldn't meet anyone's eyes, and Diane's hands trembled slightly as she served the expensive roast she'd prepared. Impressive dinner as always, Kyle said, attempting to break the oppressive silence, though I'm surprised you cooked with everything that's happening with the house sale. Everything's perfectly under control, she snapped, then forced her features into a practiced smile. Meredith, dear, I assume you've had adequate time to review the generous offer my attorney delivered yesterday? Oh yes, I took a deliberate bite of potato. Quite generous indeed. Almost as generous as the offer you accepted on your house. Her fork clattered loudly against the fine china. Trevor's father looked up, genuinely confused. The house sale? I thought that transaction wasn't being publicly discussed yet. It isn't, Diane said quickly, her voice tightly controlled, just a private business matter. Nothing that concerns everyone at this table. I pulled out my phone, casually checking the time. Interesting, because I heard the new owners are taking possession extraordinarily soon. The doorbell rang, making Diane visibly flinch. She glanced at the ornate wall clock. 6 o'clock exactly. I'll answer it, she said, standing abruptly. No need, I smiled calmly. They're here at my request. The doorbell rang again, more insistently this time. Kyle went to answer it, returning moments later with a courier holding official-looking documents. Special delivery for Mrs. Stevens, he announced to the silent room. Which Mrs. Stevens? I asked with deliberate sweetness. Diane snatched the envelope, her perfectly manicured hands shaking as she tore it open. Her face drained of color as she read. This cannot be correct. What is it, Mom? Trevor asked, half rising from his chair. It's... She looked at me, horrified realization dawning in her eyes. You're the property buyer. Buyer? Kyle grabbed the papers from his mother's limp hands. Holy shit. Meredith bought the house? That's absolutely insane. Diane sputtered incoherently, but the purchase was made by Summit Valley LLC. My LLC, I confirmed calmly, taking another bite of my dinner, established specifically for this purpose. The deed was officially recorded Friday afternoon. Trevor stood up so forcefully his chair crashed to the floor behind him. What in God's name is happening here? Your wife, Diane spat venomously, has just revealed herself as the anonymous buyer of our family home. This is underhanded manipulation. I couldn't help laughing aloud at the sheer irony. Manipulation? That's remarkably rich, coming from you of all people. Why don't you tell everyone at this table, Diane? Tell them why you really needed control of my cake shop. I don't have any idea what you're implying, she said, voice quivering despite her attempt at confidence. The refinancing for your properties fell through, didn't it? I continued calmly. The market crashed, your development projects lost nearly half their value, and suddenly you needed a new steady revenue source and collateral. Enter my profitable, debt-free cake shop. Mom, Kyle was reading through the official papers, genuine shock on his face. This is a formal eviction notice. You have 3 days to vacate the premises. It's completely unenforceable. Diane declared desperately. I'll contest this immediately. With what financial resources? I stood up, pulling additional documents from my purse. Your business accounts are overdrawn, your credit lines are maxed out, and now you've lost both the house and your opportunity to appropriate my shop's profits to save your failing empire. Trevor grabbed the papers, scanning them with growing horror. These financial statements. Mom, is this actually true? Are you insolvent? Of course it's all fabrication. She's deliberately trying to destroy our family. No, I cut in firmly. I'm preventing you from destroying anything else of mine. The cake shop transfer agreement is now void, having been signed under duress and with fraudulent intentions. My attorney filed the nullification paperwork yesterday. You can't possibly prove any of this. Actually, I can prove everything. Kyle inadvertently told me about your refinancing difficulties weeks ago. That's what triggered this entire situation, isn't it? You desperately needed my shop's assets and cash flow to secure another loan. The room fell completely silent. Trevor looked between his mother and me, his entire worldview visibly crumbling before my eyes. 3 days, I said, standing up with dignity. That's how long you legally have to vacate the property. Don't concern yourself with the cake shop renovations. I'll personally contact the contractors you scheduled. You vindictive little gold digger, careful with your choice of words, I warned calmly. The new owner of this house might decide to exercise her legal right to shorten that timeline considerably. Kyle let out a low, impressed whistle. Damn, Meredith. Mental note, never get on your bad side. Meredith. Trevor finally spoke, his voice hollow with shock. Why didn't you tell me any of this was happening? Would you honestly have believed my version of events? I asked simply. Over hers? After a lifetime of deferring to her judgment? He had no answer, his silence more revealing than any words. This situation isn't concluded, Diane threatened, though her voice betrayed her desperation. Actually, it absolutely is. I collected my purse calmly. Oh, and those quaint little cupcakes you've been disparaging for years? They were featured in Regional Pastry Monthly last spring. Just thought you should know before you attempt to elevate the recipe. I walked toward the exit with measured steps, pausing in the doorway for one final comment. Kyle, Trevor, you might want to help your mother pack her essential belongings. 3 days isn't much time to vacate a house this size. You can't simply walk away from this. Diane called after me, panic evident in her voice. Trevor, stop her. Tell her she can't. Tell her what exactly, Mom? Trevor's voice sounded weary and defeated. That you lied to all of us? That you tried to seize her business to cover your financial mismanagement? I left them there, stepping out into the cool evening air, taking my first deep breath in weeks. My phone buzzed, Allison checking in. "It's done," I typed. "Meet me at the cake shop. I could use a friend and some fresh pastries." As I drove away, I caught a final glimpse of the mansion in my rearview mirror. Diane's perfect showcase home, now legally mine. The ultimate consequence for years of manipulation and control. Tomorrow would bring its own complex challenges: my marriage, the shop's future, the family fallout. But for tonight, I had reclaimed what was mine, and that was enough. 3 days later, "She's actually gone," Kyle said in disbelief, watching the moving truck pull away from his childhood home. "I still can't believe you managed to pull this off. It's like something from a movie." I handed him a coffee from my shop, the familiar logo on the cup a comforting sight. I have moments of disbelief myself. We sat on the grand front steps, the morning sun warming the brick beneath us. The past 3 days had been absolute chaos: Diane's rage and denial, Trevor's painful silence, endless lawyer calls and negotiations, but now, finally, it was done. "Trevor's been looking for you," Kyle mentioned, sipping his coffee thoughtfully. "He's been coming to the cake shop every morning this week." "I know. Julia's been respectfully turning him away until I'm ready. He seems different now, since Sunday night. It's like he's finally waking up from some kind of lifelong trance." My phone buzzed softly, Allison sending me potential property listings. I decided to sell the mansion eventually, but not before using it for something meaningful first. "Did you see the flyer I had designed?" I asked Kyle. He pulled it from his jacket pocket, a genuine smile spreading across his face. "Free baking classes for underprivileged kids in Mom's pristine gourmet kitchen. That's absolutely brilliant poetic justice. The first class begins next Tuesday afternoon. Your mother's precious imported marble countertops are about to meet 20 enthusiastic 8-year-olds learning to make their very first pizzas." Speaking of the cake shop, Kyle hesitated, fidgeting with his coffee cup. "Mom's been telling everyone who'll listen that you manipulated her out of a legitimate business expansion opportunity." "Let her talk all she wants," I replied with newfound confidence. The truth has a remarkable way of revealing itself eventually. Right on cue, my phone lit up with a breaking news alert: local entrepreneur exposes high-profile real estate fraud scheme. Warren's media contacts had delivered as promised. "Well," Kyle stood up, brushing off his designer jeans, "I should probably get going. Mom's expecting me to help her organize her new apartment. The movers weren't exactly careful with her precious antiques." "How's she handling the dramatic downsize from mansion to apartment living?" "Let's just say her new neighbors in the senior living complex aren't particularly impressed by her endless stories about her former estate or her designer furniture that doesn't fit the floor plan." After he left, I walked through the grand house one final time. The elegant rooms still echoed with Sunday's confrontation, with Trevor's final words to his mother that kept replaying in my mind: "How could you do this to her? To us? All these years?" The front door opened behind me. I knew exactly who it was without turning around. "You haven't been home in 3 days," Trevor said quietly from the entryway. I needed space to think clearly. And now I had. I turned to face him. He looked noticeably different, more mature somehow, but also unburdened, as though he'd finally set down a weight he'd been carrying his entire life. "Now I need to know something important," I said, meeting his eyes directly. "If she hadn't been exposed, if she'd succeeded in taking over my shop, would you have ever truly stood up to her?" "I honestly don't know," he admitted, the painful truth visible in his expression. "That's what terrifies me the most about all this. I've spent my entire adult life making excuses for her behavior, believing her version of events without question, and now I want to make things right with you, with the cake shop, with everything we planned together. He stepped closer, careful to maintain a respectful distance. But first, I need to know something too. Did you orchestrate all this purely for revenge? No, I walked to the bay window, looking out at the immaculate garden where Diane had hosted countless picture-perfect family gatherings. I did it because someone finally had to stop her pattern of control, because sometimes the only effective way to deal with a lifelong bully is to remove their leverage and power. The children's baking classes, he said with a hint of admiration, that was a particularly inspired touch. The house will be sold eventually, but first it's going to genuinely help people who need it, real families from the community, not just Diane's social networking contacts. And what about us? His voice cracked slightly, revealing raw emotion. Is there still an us to salvage after all this? I turned back to face him directly. That entirely depends. Who is Trevor Stevens without his mother's influence shaping his decisions? Because that's the man I need time to get to know. I'd sincerely like to discover that myself. He pulled something from his pocket, a familiar key with my shop's logo. I had the locks at Sweet Dreams changed back yesterday. The business is yours again, legally and completely. Mom signed the ownership reversal papers this morning at her attorney's office. The weight of the key felt perfectly right in my palm, like coming home after a long journey. I'm not moving back into our house yet, I told him honestly. I need more time and space. Time. We definitely need time. I understand completely. His eyes held hope rather than resentment. But perhaps, maybe we could start with something simple like coffee at the shop? My phone buzzed again, Julia sending a photo of the grand reopening, under original ownership banner she'd proudly hung in the front window. Coffee sounds like a reasonable first step, I said, but there's something important I need to do first. I pulled out my own set of keys and held them out to Trevor. The house is yours, if you want to accept it. Not for us to live in, but for you to help coordinate the community programs we've planned. Something genuinely positive should emerge from this situation. He stared at the keys, then back at me with astonishment. You're simply giving it up, just like that? I never actually wanted this house. I only needed to demonstrate that she couldn't take what rightfully belonged to me. My smile felt genuine for the first time in weeks. Besides, I already have a true home. It features professional ovens instead of imported marble countertops, and it smells like fresh vanilla and chocolate instead of expensive designer perfume. Trevor pocketed the keys, new understanding dawning in his eyes. Coffee tomorrow, then? Would around 9:30 work? Better make it 10:30, I said. The morning rush keeps me particularly busy with regulars. You remember all those small neighborhood customers your mother was so dismissive of. He laughed, a genuine, unguarded laugh I hadn't heard in years. 10:30 it is, then. I took one final look around Diane's perfect showcase house, then walked out without a backward glance. Tomorrow would bring fresh pastries, hot coffee, and perhaps, just perhaps, an opportunity to build something authentic from the remains of what had crumbled. But first, I had some signature cupcakes to bake.